What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into episode 19 of the Auburn Daily Show. Lance Dawe here with you on this beautiful Thursday afternoon here in Auburn, Alabama. Gonna have a few topics lined up for today's episode of Auburn Daily. Don't necessarily have an overarching theme. We've just got 4 different topics that I want to hit today. And I guess the first one is probably the overarching theme. Hope everybody out there is doing well. Excited to get into today's episode. Going to be talking a little recruiting for Auburn football. Going to be taking a look at 2 prospects that Auburn football has made the top 5 for. Both of them in the trenches. Going to be talking about those 2 guys today. I'm going to be taking a look at ESPN's way too early top 25. So they did it back in January. And now that the spring is over, they have revised it. And now they have put out a post-spring way too early top 25. So we're going to take a look at that. What's up, Gregory, in the chat? War Eagle to you as well. And then I think the final thing that we're going to be taking a look at is the stat of the day, as we have been for a few episodes now. Say it at the beginning of every episode. If you're not following us on social media, go ahead and do it at SI_Auburn on Twitter. Also at Auburn Daily on Facebook, live streaming every single weekday, 4 p.m. right here on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe or follow on those different platforms. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to start here with the 3-star defensive tackle that Auburn is in the top 5 for. So Auburn right now is pursuing a lot of different prospects in the trenches on both sides. They've already gotten a commitment from Braden Joyner, offensive tackle, actually out of Auburn, Alabama. They've taken a look at a few different guys. Before we get to the offensive linemen that Auburn's made the top 5 for, I want to talk about the defensive tackle here. And this kid's out of North Carolina, Jamal Jarrett. He is a 3-star prospect out of Grimsley High School in Greensboro, North Carolina. Has included Auburn in his final 5 schools. Wrote an article about this over at Auburn Daily earlier today. Can go check that article out over at auburndaily.com. 6'5", 350-pound defensive lineman would be playing nose tackle for the Tigers, or would be playing nose tackle just about any system, to be quite honest with you. His 24/7 Sports composite player rating is .8863. So he's close to being a 4-star guy. Stuart Donald in the chat. War Eagle to you, Stuart. Hope you're doing well. Jamal Jarrett here, defensive lineman out of Greensboro, North Carolina. So his 24/7 Sports composite rating is a 3-star, but his just overall player rating is a 90, which is a 4-star. So I think if you give this kid one more year in high school, I think there's a really good chance that he can make his way up to being a 4-star after a decent senior season. Number 13 overall prospect in the state of North Carolina, the 51st best defensive lineman nationally, and then the 385th overall prospect nationally, according to 24/7 Sports. So it's not somebody that necessarily jumps off the page. I will say, when you watch his film, and you can go check his Huddle film out over on 24/7, over on Huddle's actual website. But what I like about his film is, despite the fact that he's a defensive tackle, he's got a lot of drive for somebody that plays nose tackle. He eats up a lot of space, as you would expect a nose tackle to do, but he's got a lot of push to his game. And I really, really like the way that he's able to just kind of drive into backfields. And that was probably the biggest thing, was his ability to just kind of collapse an entire offensive line by just kind of wading his way through
But yeah, really, really powerful offensive lineman or defensive lineman, despite the fact that he's not necessarily highly ranked. I think the most interesting thing here is that he, in his top 5, it's got Auburn, but it's also got Georgia and Clemson, North Carolina and LSU. They've all made the cut. He's also unofficially he's not officially visited anywhere, but he's unofficially visited Clemson, Georgia, NC State, and North Carolina. I don't know where Jarrett's leaning right now. 24/7 Sports doesn't have any crystal balls up on this kid. But according to 24/7 Sports, Jarrett also played offensive tackle, offensive guard, and defensive tackle in 2020 before primarily switching to nose tackle in 2021. And I noted this in the article that I put out. He primarily worked in a 3-4 scheme, but the way that his high school set up his 3-4 scheme is they would have 3 down linemen, and then they would have a stand-up edge rusher that would occasionally line up outside the tackle or would occasionally line up inside the tackle. And after doing a little bit of research, came to find out that that's, I believe, I may be incorrect. Some X's and O's people in the Locked on Auburn Discord may correct me on this, but from what I can tell, that 3-4 scheme with an outside linebacker or an extra edge rusher that's standing up, not with his hand in the dirt, that's called a mint front. And it's something actually that Georgia uses often. Makes sense that Georgia's in his top 5, considering they're one of the best programs out there right now, and they run a system that he could fit well in. During 9 games in 2021, Jamal Jarrett racked up 35 tackles. This was his junior season, by the way. Junior season in high school. 35 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, 8 TFLs, 3 sacks, 2 quarterback hurries, and 2 deflections. And I think that those numbers are pretty standard for a guy that was playing defensive tackle, playing nose tackle in high school. And you go and look at Auburn's roster right now, and I think that any sort of addition the Tigers could make on the defensive line would be beneficial. You look specifically at nose tackle or defensive tackle. I mean, it looks like Auburn's going to be a little thin at that position this time next season if Marquise Burks departs. So it'll be Jason Jones. Zykevius Walker will be a senior. Jason Jones will be a junior. If Jamal Jarrett were to come in and play for the Tigers, he'd be, within the rotation, definitely by his sophomore season, would have a legitimate chance to start during his junior season, or who knows, he may be able to take the job during his sophomore year. But yeah, Jamal Jarrett, an interesting prospect. Again, his top 5 schools, North Carolina, Clemson, Georgia, Auburn, and LSU. Just dropped that top 5 earlier today. That was one prospect I wanted to get to. And then there was another prospect that I wanted to discuss on the offensive side of the ball, another player in the trenches. And this guy, a little more highly touted, I think it would be fair to say. Wilkin Formby, I believe is how you pronounce his name. If I'm somehow botching that, I apologize. Wilkin Formby, 6'7", 295-pound offensive tackle. He says on his Twitter that he's 6'8", 300. But if 24/7 Sports says that he's 6'7", 295, I'm probably going to lean. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's an inch and 5 pounds. Who really cares? He's a pretty big kid at offensive tackle. Out of Northridge High School, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. According to 24/7 Sports composites rating, he is a 4-star, a mid 4-star. Has a .9354 grade, the number 14 overall prospect in the state of Alabama, number 16 offensive tackle nationally, and then the 151st overall prospect nationally. Auburn made his top 5. His top 5 included the Tigers, included Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. So an SEC-heavy top 5 for the 4-star offensive lineman out of Tuscaloosa, Wilkin Formby. And this is what 24/7 Sports national recruiting analyst Cooper Pategna. Yeah, I'm awful with names if you can't tell. This is what Cooper Pategna had to say about Formby. I'm just quoting directly here. Verified at 6'7" and a shade under 300 pounds, Formby possesses a long, lean frame with growth potential to add additional weight to his frame. He displays good athletic ability at the right tackle position, appears to have natural knee bend and hip flexibility, demonstrates good foot and body quickness off the line of scrimmage, and plays with some suddenness. That's pretty nice for a guy that's listed at 6'7", 300. Exhibits above average foot quickness and pass production, and shows the ability to anchor in his pass set. Possesses good play strength at the point of attack, showing the ability to move defenders naturally off the line of scrimmage. Possesses the ability to finish and sustain blocks. Has some nasty to him. Flashes some ability to play at the second level in space, but his skill set is more geared toward a traditional power scheme. You like to hear that if you're just trying to relate him back to what Auburn wants to do. Long, lean tackle that has room to grow and possesses developmental upside to play at left tackle at the next level. Has a really good feel for the game. Will need 1 to 2 years to develop physically at the next level, but projects as a high-level, multi-year starter at a Power 5 program. I mean, you read that off, and honestly, to be honest with you, I didn't have to read all of that just for me to get excited about the fact that Auburn's pursuing a mid-4-star at tackle, and they're in the running for him. And they're one of his top 5 schools. I mean, it's been a long time since Auburn's been able to pick up a tackle, a highly touted one at that. Of course, they haven't gotten a commitment from him. All we know is that he'll go to like Alabama or Ole Miss and just break our hearts. But Auburn's in the running for Wilkin Formby for sure. Question is whether or not we're going to be able to pick him up. But just the fact that Auburn is understanding that their game plan here, I think, for this year's recruiting class needs to be focusing on what you can do in the trenches to kind of shore up that offensive line, to kind of get it ready for next season, right? After all of these departures, all of these experienced players leave the program, you're setting yourself up to have some depth if you can get if you can get some more guys. You've only got one right now in Braden Joyner. But if you can pick up a few more guys, I think that you would be very satisfied with the way that this class turns out. Wilkin Formby could potentially be one of those guys. Tigers in hot pursuit of him. So that's Jamal Jarrett. That's Wilkin Formby. 2 guys on the recruiting trail, or Auburn's recruiting trail, that they have made the final 5 cut for. And I didn't plan on talking about this today, but I wanted to briefly mention it before we move on to our next topic. Andrew Stanford, writer here at auburndaily.com, he wrote about this yesterday. So there's been a back and forth going on social media between Auburn quarterback TJ Finley and Auburn basketball player Katie Johnson, just talking about just speculation over who would win, Auburn's walk-ons or some of Auburn's football players. And so they had been kind of joking about it, kind of going back and forth about just, what would actually happen. And then they set up a date, and then they actually went and played last night in Auburn Arena. And the walk-ons through 5 games won by a score of 3-2. And that's not like 3-2, like one team made a 3 and the other team made a 2. I mean, the walk-ons won 3 games, and the football team won 2. I believe the starters for the football team were TJ Finley, Desmond Tisdall, Jalen Simpson, Trey Lindsey, and Brandon Frazier, the tight end, if I'm not mistaken. That was their starting 5. And then the starting 5 for the walk-ons, I had it written down. Just got to eventually go find it. It was Lear Berman, Chandler. Is it Leopard or Leopard? I'm a moron. I don't know. It was Chandler, it was Berman, it was Michael Whitmore, who got blocked more times than I've ever seen in a 30-minute stretch of basketball in my entire life. I mean, every single shot that kid just about put up was just sent into the stands by football players, no less, man. Come on. But those were 3. Carter Sabrera was out there as well. And I don't know who else was out there. Or I think there was actually a scout for the women's team that was playing with the walk-ons, if I'm not mistaken. But the thing is like, while that's all good and fun, and Leo Berman actually looks stinking unstoppable out there, while that's all good and fun, I'm pretty sure TJ Finley and Katie Johnson are going to run it back. And I think they've got something coming next week based on what I've heard. I think they put something up similar on their Instagram story. I think they're going to have another go at this, but I think it's going to be a little bit more bigger of an event. So stay tuned for that. We're probably going to be talking about that here on the show. They're probably going to have a round 2 for that. All right. I want to talk about ESPN's way too early top 25 in just a second. But before we do that, guys, I want to tell you about our friends at AU Shirts. AU Shirts is the new place to visit to help you flex your Auburn fandom. It's the one-stop shop for all Auburn fans being able to display their sports fandom for every major sport here on the Plains. The newest shirt at aushirts.com is actually a design for Auburn baseball player Brady Moore. They've also got a shirt for Sonny DeShara, Thick King. We talked about this on yesterday's show. I'm just going to pull up the picture again. Josh Hall was hanging out at the baseball game on Tuesday night wearing the Thick King shirt. Absolutely fantastic design. I absolutely love the fact that the baseball players are really buying into it here. Locked on Auburn, AU Shirts for life. Yes, sir. I was actually wearing my my Support the Troops, Run the Triple Option shirt on yesterday's show. They're comfortable. They're awesome designs. They help you support the Auburn Tigers. You can also find shirts ranging from the Everything School design to celebrating the Cruton finger, which is just, I cannot believe that meme still has life. And I absolutely love that it's kind of been immortalized as a shirt and a cup and all these different things. It's great. You can also get shirts that say like Portal Season, and AU Shirts has other official player designs coming soon. They're going to have a ton here, I believe, especially as we get into football season. So make sure you're going over to aushirts.com to get some merch. AU Shirts is giving Auburn Daily viewers 10% off of their order right now. So all you have to do is go to aushirts.com and use promo code DAILY whenever you check out. Again, that's aushirts.com, promo code DAILY, DAILY, for 10% off your order. Make sure to check our guys out, aushirts.com. All right. I wanted to talk about ESPN's way too early top 25. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, they've revised it. They have updated it. They put one out January 10th, I believe. And it was breaking down, just all the different rankings pre-spring, and just kind of giving their overall thoughts about, who's starting or what production is coming back, all that different stuff. And now that spring is over, they have redone the rankings. So let's work our way down here. And no, this is not directly Auburn related, but I just wanted to point out that like half the SEC's in here, and I just wanted to talk about that for a second because it's tough. It's going to be tough sledding for the Tigers this year. Alabama is at number 1. They were previously number 1 in the first poll. You got 5 starters on offense coming back, 7 on defense, 2 on special teams. Got a couple of interesting pieces coming in. Eli Ricks from LSU, Jermaine Burton from Georgia, Jahmyr Gibbs, a running back from Georgia Tech. They've got some pieces coming in from the transfer portal. Now, whether or not they're going to be able to utilize those guys to their fullest extent is the question. I assume that Alabama will simply reload and Bryce Young will be able to lead them. At least they're going to contend for another national title in 2022. At number 2, Ohio State. They've got a good bit of production coming back outside of Chris Olave, their wide receiver, and Garrett Wilson as well. 2 guys that are potentially going to be first-round picks. As a matter of fact, speaking of the NFL draft, we just actually 18 minutes ago dropped the Auburn Daily NFL mock draft. Me, Zach Blackerby, Lindsey Crosby, Trey Lee, and Andrew Stefaniak, Gray Oldenburg as well. We all collectively took turns drafting all these different players in the first round and then gave an explanation as to why we did. That just dropped. It is a massive, massive gallery of every single pick from the first round and an explanation as to why they were taken. You can go check that out over at auburndaily.com, auburndaily.com. Just a really, really good information over there. Just literally every single thing you need to know about every single pick that's gonna potentially happen. Roger McCreary goes in the first round, by the way. You can scroll through and see where he goes. Ohio State at number 2, though, losing 2 potential first-round receivers. And then at number 3, you've got Georgia, who only brings back 4 players on defense, but that doesn't surprise me. And then here's the first bump in the road for me. ESPN has Utah. They bumped them up from number 7 to number 4, and they're way too early top 25. Now, my immediate gut reaction was they must be bringing back a lot of production because ESPN will do crap like this. They'll be like, oh, well, here's this team, this Power 5 school that's been like consistently good or kind of been up and down. It's like at the moment that they get a lot of production coming back, they're like, we're putting these guys at number 1 to the moon, baby. Like they're going to win the Natty somehow, some way. Let's roll some tide. But like this is like a typical ESPN thing to do, where it's like we're slapping Utah up there at number 4. But here's the thing: they only bring back 6 starters on offense and 6 on defense. It's not like they're bringing back a combined like 18 starters. They're not a ton of experience. Now they do have their quarterback coming back, but they lose 2 of the best linebackers of the Pac-12. Lose one of their better receivers. They lose a couple pieces on the offensive line, right? And so it's just like, can you justify Utah repeating as Pac-12 champions? I think you can definitely make an argument for it. Now, the problem here is that Oregon and USC are legitimate contenders, and it's not an easy path for Utah in the Pac-12 this season. But here's the thing: is like you can try and justify that in your mind. Like you could make that argument, but like to make the argument that not only could they potentially win the Pac-12 again, but then make it into the CFP as the 4th team. I just like if that's where we're looking at preseason right now, is like they're the 4th best team in the country. I don't know about that, fam. I don't know. Of course, then I think you have to genuinely ask the question, well, who else would you put it for? I think the next closest team would be Texas A&M, who's at 5, who ESPN moved down a spot, I guess, after seeing how weird the quarterback play was during the spring game. At number 6, you've got Notre Dame. Notre Dame can literally, if they could just be unranked forever, I'd be okay with that. I do respect their coach, Marcus Freeman. I think he knows what he's doing there. I have enough respect for him to just not completely hate Notre Dame, but if they could just not be ranked, that would be cool. Number 7, NC State. They've got a lot of, this is the ESPN pick right here. They've got 8 starters returning on offense, 9 on defense, got a really good quarterback in Devin Leary coming back. And they've got a couple of interesting additions in the transfer portal as well. NC State could be an interesting team to watch. They're arguably the biggest threat to Clemson in the ACC, and all things considered. I mean, they're ranked 3 spots higher than them, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, it's more than that. It's 4. Michigan State at 8, Michigan at 9, Oklahoma State at 10. Not sure how good Oklahoma State can be, given the fact that their offense is, in my opinion, just not very good, and they've lost Jalen Warren, their best running back. So it's not a great situation. Also, Derek Mason's the DC now, and he's got 4 starters to work with. We've seen what happens as Auburn fans. Best of luck to you. Enjoy allowing opponents to complete 80% of their passes in the Big 12. That's in the Big 12. If you were frustrated with passes going for 8 or 9 yards against Auburn, they'll be going for like 30 in the Big 12. People are just going to be throwing all over Oklahoma State. Thanks, Derek Mason. He's not that bad. I'm just joking. Number 11, Clemson. Their offense has looked abysmal for 2 years in a row now. They need some offensive linemen. Coach Dawe just kind of says we don't need the transfer portal, and we're just going to roll tide. We're just going to keep picking up recruits and just praying that they work out. It's not worked out for 2 years in a row now. Let's see what happens in year 3 of them just kind of like not being good on the O-line. At number 12, you've got USC. Here's my thing with USC. While they may end up being like a good program, like they may end up kind of like restoring form or like returning to glory, so to speak, like they were in the early 2000s. Like the people that are high on USC, it's not just sipping the Kool-Aid, right? It's not your typical Texas is back kind of thing. It's not sipping the Kool-Aid. People are drinking this stuff by the gallon. Like they are getting every single bit of USC that they can get. Colin Coward's on the train right now. Josh Pate of 24/7 Sports is on the train right now. Now, I think that it's fair to look at what they've been historically and see this really good coach coming in and seeing all these new additions and saying like they can be something special. I mean, they've got Caleb Williams, they got Travis Dye, running back from Oregon, they got Mario Williams from Oklahoma, a receiver, Brendan Rice from Colorado, related to Jerry Rice. That's right. They actually got Romello Height, a linebacker out of Auburn. They've got some interesting pieces coming in, but like I just don't get like the insane hype. Like I think ESPN was fair whenever they said that in their January ranking, like USC's number 22 in our way too early top 25. Like I think that's fair. I think somewhere between like 18 and 25 is fair. But to move them up 10 spots after apparently they had the greatest I don't remember if it was Colin Coward or whoever said it, but it was just like that's the greatest practice that has ever been performed on a college football field ever. It's just like, really? Really? It's like you get one 30-yard pass from Caleb Williams in a practice scrimmage, and all of a sudden you're winning a national title. Like, come on, guys. Come on, let's settle down a little bit. Again, it's not me saying that they won't be good. I'm just saying, like, people are getting really excited about USC, and I just don't know how much of it's warranted. At number 13, you've got Houston, the team that beat Auburn in the Birmingham Bowl last season. They actually should be pretty good this year, all things considered, with their offense. Oklahoma at 14, Pitt at 15, Oregon at 16 with Bo Nix at the helm. Potentially, is he going to start? I think he will, but it's up in the air right now. At number 17, you've got Wake Forest. A little too low for my liking, considering they bring back just about everybody and their mother on the offense. But we'll just have to see there. Number 18, Baylor. A little too low for the reigning Big 12 champions. They bring back 14 combined starters. Don't really see the logic there. Bring back their quarterback as well, so I don't really get what's going on there. Number 19, BYU. Probably a fair spot for BYU, although they bring back a combined 19 starters. At number 20, you've got Arkansas. I think Arkansas has got a little bit of boom or bust potential this season. I think Zach Blackerby and I talked about this on the show a couple of days ago. Might have been last week. I don't remember, but we're talking about like how Arkansas probably kind of overachieved a little bit last season. Like, I know they went 9-4, but they probably, in reality, like if you played that season out again, we're probably like 7-5, 4-4 in the SEC type of good, right? Or like 3-5 in the SEC type of good. Of course, I still stand by what I said. It was like, you're probably like 11-1 in the Pac-12 if you're Arkansas. Like, I stand by that. But Arkansas only brings back a combined 9 starters. Their schedule is just crazy. It is really, really difficult. Actually, I'll go ahead and pull it up for you. They open the year with Cincinnati, and then they play South Carolina at home. They play Missouri State. That's a dub. But then they play at Texas A&M. They get Alabama at home, at Mississippi State, at BYU, at Auburn, at home against Liberty, at home against LSU, at home against Ole Miss, and then at Missouri. I mean, that is a crazy, crazy schedule right there. So I think that there's some boom or bust potential for the Razorbacks this year. I wonder what their receiving core is going to look like. They got Jadon Hazelwood, transfer from Oklahoma. That's going to be interesting. Drew Sanders, linebacker from Alabama, trying to revamp the defense a little bit. Boom or bust potential with the Arkansas Razorbacks. So number 21, you've got Ole Miss. Got a lot of interesting additions in the transfer portal. Zach Evans, 5-star running back from TCU. Jackson Dart, 5-star quarterback from USC. Tight end Michael Trigg. They got J.J. Pegues. Ladarius Tennyson. I mean, they've gotten so many different players in the transfer portal. Excited to see what Ole Miss's revamped offense looks like this year. At number 22, they've got Kentucky. Kentucky, I think, is a team that could legitimately like take a shot at the SEC East and win it. They get Georgia at home this year. Now, if you ask me right now to predict it, I'm saying Georgia wins the SEC East. But like, if we're heading into November, and there's a Kentucky versus Georgia game looming large, and like both teams are somehow undefeated, like that's going to be a tough one for the Bulldogs. Number 23, Cincinnati. Number 24, Tennessee, and then number 25, Iowa. If I'm not mistaken, that's 6 SEC teams in the top 25. And I mean, ESPN's FPI, they may have gotten one thing wrong in saying that Auburn's a top 10 team and is going to be 13.9 points per game better than the average team in college football. But what they did get right, in my opinion, was the strength of schedule. Auburn currently has the most difficult strength of schedule in the entire country. And so you just look up and down this top 25. I mean, you're getting to play a lot of really difficult opponents. And just the question for me is like, will Auburn be able to survive? It's going to be a tough out in the SEC. And I just kind of wanted to skim through the top 25, give my thoughts on some of the different teams. I always love looking at some of the different things from a national perspective, because I think that it's fun to keep up with what's going on as a college football fan, as an Auburn fan. All right, I got one more thing here I wanted to talk about before we head out. It's the stat of the day. Zach Blackerby, writer here at Auburn Daily, host of the Locked on Auburn podcast, put this statistic together. It's really interesting. I was wondering when the Pro Football Focus grades were going to come into play. and they did today. Keandre Jones, this is a statistic in relation to him, in relation to Auburn's pass blocking. In 2021, Keandre Jones was in pass protection on 416 plays. 416 plays he was in pass pro. He did not allow one sack through 416 plays in pass protection. He did allow 10 quarterback pressures over the course of the season, but not a single sack from Keandre Jones. And this is what Zach Blackerby said in his article. Go check it out over at auburndaily.com. This is what that statistic means to him. Unless Auburn's run blocking makes a complete 180 from a year ago, the Tigers will have to rely on their passing game to gain yards consistently in SEC play next year. Some of you are listeners of the Locked On Auburn podcast. I'm sure you've heard Charlie 5, and Zach has probably said something similar, heard them say Auburn may need to throw 35 or 40 times a game to have a shot in games this season, or to even win. Like, they've got to be able to throw the ball because their running game is not fantastic because of the run blocking. Talked about that recently on the show, actually. So whoever starts a quarterback will need protection up front if Auburn's going to throw the ball that much. This is what Zach says. Keandre Jones and the rest of the offensive line will need to give Auburn's passer as much time as possible and aim to keep the pocket clean so they can step into their foot throws and find their targets down the field. That's what Auburn's scheme is going to ask of them, is to keep it as clean as possible for these pocket passing quarterbacks. Another statistic here, according to Pro Football Focus, Jones scored a 76.9 pass blocking grade. The only member of Auburn's offensive line that scored higher than that was Cameron Stutz, except Stutz only played 6 snaps where he had to pass block all season, so it wasn't really much of a sample size. But point being, Keandre Jones is Auburn's best pass blocker returning, at least statistically. But the extra point that Zach is trying to make here in this statistic of the day, and I agree with him, is that like, we're going to need that across the board for Auburn's offensive line in 2022. This offense is going to, I don't want to say center around throwing the football, because I think the offensive identity still wants to be a ground game, centered around the ground game, but they're going to have to throw the football, even though they may not want to. I feel like they're going to still have to do it. So Keandre Jones, is he going to be able to continue and continue to step up with the rest of this incredibly experienced offensive line? I hope so. I believe so, but we'll just have to see. We will just have to see. All right. I think that's everything. That's everything we got today for the Thursday edition of the Auburn Daily Show. Guys, if you're not already, again, I'm going to mention it again, follow us on social media at SI_Auburn on Twitter, and then also at Auburn Daily over at Facebook, live streaming here every single weekday starting at 4 p.m. on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube. By the way, we're over 100 subs on YouTube, which is hype. 19 episodes in, already 100 subs. That is dope. Let's keep it going. Thank you guys so much for subscribing to the channel. Yeah. For today's episode of the Auburn Daily Show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your afternoon. We'll see you all tomorrow for the roundtable edition of the Auburn Daily Show. Infinite Auburn is going to join us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, great rest of your afternoon. I will see you all tomorrow, and God bless.